The 43rd carton was sitting on my mail carrier's hand truck when he asked me to sign for it. I had agreed to receive 6 boxes for my son, so why was a stranger sending another return to my house? I kept my hand away from the scanner. "Can you tell me who sent it, Ray?" He turned the label toward himself. I could see my name and my address, but I did not touch the box. 30 years behind a postal counter had taught me that there is a quiet moment before custody changes hands. You check the name, the sender, the service, the condition. Then you decide what you are accepting. Ray read me a name I had never heard. I called my son while the carton remained on the hand truck. "Gavin," I said when he answered, "there is another Bright Loop return here. It needs my signature." "Great, just take it, Mom. I'll get it Sunday." 3 days earlier, I might have done exactly that. Then I had opened carton 38 at Gavin's request and found a printed card on top of a returned lamp. It said, "Bright Loop Home Returns," followed by my full address. Not Gavin's apartment, not a rented mailbox, my blue bungalow on Alder Street. Before I could call him, his partner Tessa had sent me a text. "Thank you for volunteering to manage returns through launch. Gavin says it means a lot to have you on the team." That was when I understood I was not looking at a few extra packages. My son had built a department inside my house, and he had told his partner I had asked for the job. It had begun 6 weeks earlier at my kitchen table. Gavin came over on a Tuesday evening with takeout soup and the restless smile he had worn since starting Bright Loop Home. He sold lamps, shelves, woven baskets, and small tables online. Nothing extravagant. He had good taste and a real eye for taking an ordinary room and making it feel cared for. He also had a habit of speaking about plans as though the difficult parts had already agreed to cooperate. "The samples are coming sooner than expected," he told me. "The apartment office won't hold them, and Tessa and I are moving units this week. Could they come here?" "How many?" "6. They should all be here by Friday." I tore the flap from a grocery envelope and wrote down the 6 tracking numbers he read from his phone. That was an old work habit. If someone handed me 6 things, I wanted 6 lines. It was not suspicion. It was how I kept other people's property from becoming a story about memory. 6 boxes through Friday," I said. He leaned over and kissed my temple. "You're saving me." I was glad to help. I had retired 11 months earlier, and although I did not miss standing on concrete all day, I missed being useful in ways that had a beginning and an end. At the post office, a line moved. A shift finished. A tray went from full to empty. Retirement was quieter, but it did not always tell me when I had done enough. Gavin knew that because I had told him. In the first months after retirement, he called most afternoons on his drive home. Sometimes he wanted advice. Sometimes I think he wanted to make sure I had spoken to another person that day. That attention made what happened later harder to reduce to a simple judgment. He had also worked for this launch. For nearly a year, he took product photographs after his regular job and answered customer messages from the sofa. He and Tessa skipped a vacation so they could pay for inventory. When the first order came in, he drove to my house just to show me the confirmation on his phone. I had never doubted his effort. I had doubted some of his arithmetic. When he described Bright Loop, he counted the cost of lamps, packing paper, platform fees, and advertising. He did not count the hours spent answering a return. He did not count the square feet needed when a customer changed her mind. He spoke of those things as problems that would disappear once sales grew. At the post office, growth never made a package weigh less. Still, none of that made 6 cartons unreasonable. I cleared the dining room wall because it was dry, close to the front door, and out of my walking path. I checked each tracking number off the envelope flap as it arrived. The first box held 2 table lamps. The second held nested baskets. The 6th came Friday at 4:20, and I remember feeling pleased that the little list had closed exactly as promised. That should have been the end of my part. The first 6 cartons arrived by Friday. I lined them along the dining room wall and sent Gavin 1 photograph. On Saturday, a 7th arrived. "Sorry," he texted, Supplier split one shipment. I'll grab all 7 tomorrow. I wrote a 7th line on the envelope flap. On Sunday, he loaded 4 cartons into his hatchback. He said the remaining 3 would not fit and promised to return Monday. Monday brought 2 more boxes and no Gavin. One was long and narrow. One had a crushed corner. "Can you photograph that damage before you move it?" he asked. I took 3 pictures. "Could you open it and make sure the shade isn't bent?" I hesitated, but he was on the phone with a supplier, and opening one carton felt smaller than making him drive across town. Inside was a brass-colored floor lamp. I checked the shade and sent another photograph. "Perfect," he said. "You're better at this than the warehouse." At the time, I heard gratitude. Later, I heard the comparison. The boxes did not arrive in a dramatic flood. They came 2 on Tuesday, 1 on Wednesday, none on Thursday, then 4 on Friday. That rhythm made it easy to treat each day as an exception. Gavin always had a reason. A customer had used the wrong label. A supplier had shipped late. His building manager was being difficult. The new apartment was full of photography equipment. Each reason was temporary. The cartons were not. My old job had trained me to notice accumulation, but it had also trained me to solve the line in front of me. If a label curled, I smoothed it. If a corner split, I found tape. If 2 small boxes could be stacked safely, I stacked them. Every practical improvement bought a little more room, and every little bit of room postponed the conversation. Gavin learned the rhythm quickly. He never asked, "May I use your dining room for another month?" He asked whether I could move 1 carton away from the radiator. He asked for 1 photograph because a customer was waiting. He asked if a set of screws had fallen loose. Each question took less time to answer than it would have taken to explain why the whole arrangement was wrong. One Thursday, I left for the grocery store with a clear porch and returned to 3 cartons under the awning. Rain had darkened the concrete around them. I dragged the largest one inside because the bottom was softening. When I told Gavin, he said, "Good catch." I wanted him to hear that as information about the risk. He heard it as confirmation that his system worked. That evening, I wrote the arrival dates on the cartons in black marker. It was not an agreement to manage them. I did it because Gavin had begun claiming the oldest boxes had arrived only days earlier. Dates would keep the conversation honest. But when he saw the markings, he smiled. "This is why I need you," he said. Need can sound a great deal like love when it comes from your child. By the end of the 2nd week, they had spread from the dining room wall to the space beside the china cabinet. Gavin asked me to put a yellow note on items that looked unused and a blue note on anything damaged. He dropped off tape, markers, and a small scale. "Only until I catch up," he said. I asked when that would be. "Sunday, definitely." Sunday became the hinge on which every promise swung. He would collect everything, update the address, make room. Then Sunday would come, and he would arrive late, take the easiest cartons, and leave the awkward ones behind. The first time my dining room door caught against a box, I moved the box. The second time, I moved the table 6 inches. The third time, I stopped inviting anyone to sit there. I had been planning a small repair afternoon with my neighbor Marisol. We both disliked throwing away useful things for want of a screw, a stitch, or 20 minutes of patience. She had a toaster with a loose lever. I had 2 lamps that needed new cords, though after retirement I never seemed to pick a date. When she asked if Saturday still worked, I looked at my dining room and said, "Let's use your place. Gavin's launch is taking a little longer." I did not tell her that some of the cartons now carried names I did not recognize. The first customer return was a small table with 1 leg wrapped separately inside. The label put a woman's name above my street address. I called Gavin immediately. "This is not a sample." "No, that one is a return. The platform kept the test address." "My address? I'll change it. Just set it with the others." A customer thinks this is your business. One customer, Mom. It's already fixed. It was not fixed. 2 more returns came that week. I told him he needed to collect everything and stop using the house. He went quiet in the way he had learned as a boy, as if silence could make the other person responsible for softening the room. "I'm trying to build something," he finally said. "I know. Every change right now looks unstable. Bad reviews will bury us before we start. That doesn't make my house a warehouse." "I didn't say warehouse. It's a few boxes. There are 19, and I'm getting them Sunday." Then he said the sentence that kept me from finishing what I had started. "I can pay for storage, Mom. What I can't buy is my own mother believing in me." I wish I could say I recognized that as pressure immediately. I did not. I heard the tiredness in his voice. I remembered him at 9, building stores from cereal boxes on the living room rug. I remembered the year after his father died, when Gavin was 27 and came by every evening because neither of us knew how to eat alone yet. I did believe in him. So I accepted Sunday. He collected 4 cartons. The following Tuesday, he asked me to open 3 returns and tell him whether the items could be resold. One had a scratch, one was missing hardware, one looked untouched. I found myself standing at the dining table with his scale, his tape, and his markers, making neat columns on a legal pad. Item, sender, condition, action needed. It was the kind of system I could build in 10 minutes, because I had spent decades preventing one person's package from becoming another person's problem. I separated unopened cartons from opened ones. I put hardware in clear bags and taped each bag to the correct item. I photographed damage beside a ruler so the size was clear. When Gavin arrived, he looked genuinely relieved. "This is incredible," he said. "Do you know how many hours you saved me?" 3, I said, because that's how many I spent. He laughed as though I had made a joke. He took a photograph of my grid. That evening I heard him on speakerphone telling Tessa, "Mom and I have a return system now." "You have a return system," I corrected. He lifted one finger to show me he was listening to Tessa. Then he walked into the garage to finish the call. That word stayed with me. Hours. It was a friendly word, a family word. It was also a way of putting my name on a decision I had never made. The next morning, Marisol found me moving my trash bin sideways through the garage because the usual path had narrowed between a floor lamp, 2 cartons of shelves, and a rolled rug. She held the bin while I angled it past the rug. "How long is the launch?" she asked. "It's temporary." "That isn't a length of time." Marisol did not say it sharply. She was watching my left hand where a cardboard edge had scraped a red line across my knuckle. "He is overwhelmed," I said. "I expect he is." "And I said I would help," she nodded toward the garage. "What did you actually say yes to?" I knew the answer before I found the envelope flap in the kitchen drawer. 6 tracking numbers. Through Friday. The paper looked almost childish beside the legal pad full of customer returns. I had written every new line myself, but I had never been asked the original question again. That afternoon I called Gavin and asked if Tessa would be home after work. I did not want another conversation that could be retold differently. Their apartment was only 15 minutes away. It was clean but crowded, with a lighting stand beside the sofa and baskets stacked under the breakfast bar. There was room for a life there. There was not room for the size of business Gavin was pretending to have. Tessa made coffee. Gavin stayed standing. I placed the envelope flap on the counter. "This is what I agreed to," I said. 6 sample boxes through that Friday. "My dining room and part of my garage are full now. Customer returns are coming to my address. It ends this week." Tessa looked from the paper to Gavin. "You said your mom offered to handle returns through launch." "She did offer to help. I offered to receive 6 samples. Gavin rubbed both hands over his face. This is exactly what I was trying to avoid. We're talking about family help like it's a contract. I am talking about what I said yes to. I didn't force you to open anything. You asked me. And you always said okay. That was true in the smallest possible way. It was also the argument that hurt most. He had stopped asking whether I agreed to the arrangement and started collecting all my separate moments of reluctance into one permanent yes. Tessa asked, "How many boxes are there?" "I don't know exactly." Gavin seized on that. "See, this sounds bigger because they're spread out." I looked at him and understood that a guess would give him another place to hide. "I'll count them tonight," I said. Tessa touched the edge of the envelope flap. "Why would he tell me you offered?" Gavin answered before I could. "Because she did. Not in those exact words maybe, but she said she wanted something useful to do." "I told you retirement was quiet," I said. "I did not offer you my house." "You make it sound calculated." "Was it?" He turned toward the window. I could see the pulse working in the side of his jaw. Tessa asked him whether the return address had ever been set to their apartment. He said the building discouraged business deliveries. She asked whether he had applied for a mailbox. He said they needed stable volume first. She asked where the storage line was in the launch budget. "This is not a board meeting," he said. "No," I said. "It is the first time all three of us have heard the same version." That landed harder than I intended. Gavin pulled out a stool and sat down. It also answered the question Tessa's first text had opened. She had not invented my volunteer role or misunderstood a stray remark. Gavin had given her a version of my consent that made his missing budget look settled. For a moment he looked less like an entitled son than a frightened man surrounded by decisions he had made faster than he could support. I felt my anger loosen. That was dangerous because compassion had become the place where I abandoned the end of my own sentences. I kept going. "I'm not asking you to close the business. I'm telling you my address and my rooms are no longer part of it." He said, "If we change everything now, customers will think we're disappearing." Tessa looked at him. "Are we?" "Of course not." "Then we should be able to pay for the parts of the business we say we have." He looked at me as though I had brought her there to corner him. I had not. I had brought myself there so I could no longer be divided into whichever version was most useful. I left the envelope flap on the counter long enough for Tessa to photograph the 6 numbers. Then I took it home. It was not evidence for a case. It was a reminder of the size of my own yes. On the drive home, anger came easily. Grief came later. Tessa had believed I wanted a retirement project. Gavin had told her the work gave me purpose. I sat in my driveway with the engine off and remembered telling him, months earlier, that some afternoons felt too quiet. He had taken a tender fact about me and used it to make free labor sound like a gift. Inside the house, I did what I knew how to do. I counted. I started at the porch and worked inward. 4 unopened cartons by the entry, 11 opened returns along the dining room wall, 6 items Gavin had marked ready for resale, 9 cartons in the garage, 7 long pieces behind the car, 5 boxes of mixed hardware and shades beneath the windows, 42. I separated them into 3 groups, unopened, opened, and waiting for a decision, ready for pickup. I matched loose pieces to the notes I had made. I did not improve anything. I did not take one more photograph. I made the inventory complete enough for it to leave. At 11 that night, I sat at the dining table with the blue lamp carton pressed against the chair behind me. For weeks, I had asked the wrong question. How can I help without making him angry? The better question was simpler. What will I accept next? I drafted a message with the count and 2 pickup windows. Saturday from 9 to noon, Sunday from 2 to 5, no new Bright Loop packages accepted after Friday. I did not send it yet. I wanted to say the words to Gavin first. He called the next morning before I could call him. "Tessa says you counted everything." 42 cartons and loose items grouped with them. He exhaled hard. Okay, that's more than I thought. For one hopeful second, I believed the number had reached him. Then he said, I need 10 days. No. There's a weekend promotion already scheduled. When did you schedule it? He paused. Monday. Monday was after our first conversation about customer returns. It was before he told Tessa and me that the volume had surprised him. You scheduled more orders while you were promising to clear my house. I scheduled a promotion because if we miss this window, the whole launch stalls. Then you need a returns address that belongs to your business. I'm arranging one. By Friday, no more business packages here. You can collect what is already here Saturday morning or Sunday afternoon. His voice changed. The pleading edge flattened. You won't actually turn away a customer's return. It was not a question. After we hung up, I sent the count and the pickup windows in a group message to both Gavin and Tessa. Within a minute, Gavin messaged me separately. Why are you involving her in every detail? I did not answer privately. In the group thread, I wrote, I am keeping one account so no one has to rely on a summary. Tessa replied first. I didn't know there were 42. The promotion budget has nothing for storage or return processing. Gavin wrote that they could solve the budget after the weekend. Refunds were already high. Changing instructions would trigger complaints. He listed each pressure as though placing it in my hands changed who had created it. I understood his fear. Brightloop was not a fraud. He had customers, real products, and bills. He had worked late for months, but the business looked affordable only because my rooms were free and my hours had disappeared from the arithmetic. That evening, he came to the house without warning. I met him on the porch and did not invite him past the cartons in the entry. I want to see the inventory, he said. I sent it to you. I want to see what you're calling 42. I stepped aside. He counted quickly, touching 2 cartons at a time, as if speed might reduce the total. At the mixed hardware boxes, he said those should count as 1. At the rolled rug, he said it was not a carton at all. Call them 39 if that helps you plan the van, I said. They all leave. He stopped counting. Tessa thinks I lied to her. Did you tell her I volunteered to run returns? I told her you were helping. Those are different sentences. You know what I meant. I know what she heard. He walked into the dining room and saw the legal pad, the scale, and the colored notes. For a second, shame crossed his face. Then he picked up the scale. I can take this tonight. Take it. He tucked it under his arm but left every carton. At the door, he said, if you refuse something, it doesn't just vanish. Someone still has to deal with it. Yes, I said, the business does. After he left, I noticed he had taken the tool that made the work easier, while still expecting me to do the work. I almost laughed. Instead, I moved the unopened cartons closest to the door and left the rest exactly where they were. That afternoon, a tracking notice showed a signature parcel due Friday. Carton 43. Friday morning was cold enough that Ray wore gloves. He rolled the hand truck to my porch, checked the number, and held out the scanner. That was where my story began, though by then the decision had been traveling toward me for 6 weeks. I asked who sent the parcel. Ray read the unfamiliar name. The box was addressed to me, required a signature, and was still unopened. More importantly, it was still in his custody. I called Gavin. Great, he said. Just take it, Mom. I'll get it Sunday. I told you no new business packages after Friday. It is Friday. I said after Friday because I expected ordinary deliveries through today. This is the return I warned you about, and you knew it was coming. Then make this the last one. The last one was 42. Mom, please, that customer has already been waiting. I looked at Ray. He was not impatient. He was simply holding a carton that required an answer. Gavin lowered his voice. Do not do this to me over one box. For years I had thought restraint meant making the room easier for everyone else. At that moment, restraint meant not arguing about whether one box was small. I did not need Gavin to agree with my count. I needed to decide whether the count could keep growing. "I'm not accepting it," I said. "You're going to damage my business. I am ending the use of my house. Same thing right now." "Then that is a business problem you need to solve." There was a long silence. "I thought you believed in me." "I do. Believing in you is not the same as working for you without being asked." I ended the call before either of us could turn that sentence into a speech. Ray asked, "Would you like to refuse it?" "Yes." He marked the parcel while it remained on the hand truck. The wheels knocked softly against the first porch step as he took it back toward the street. Nothing dramatic happened. No crowd saw it. My son did not suddenly understand. A box simply did not enter my house. Then I opened the group thread. I wrote, "The signature parcel arriving today was refused unopened. I will not receive, open, photograph, sort, store, or process Bright Loop items at this address. The 42 existing cartons are inventoried. Pickup remains Saturday 9 to noon or Sunday 2 to 5. I attached the inventory without customer names or photographs. Tessa replied, "I will help collect everything Saturday." Gavin called twice. I let the calls ring. When he wrote that I was humiliating him in front of Tessa, I answered once. "Tessa is your partner. I am not discussing your shared business separately." That was all. Saturday morning, Gavin and Tessa arrived in a rented cargo van. Gavin did not look at me when I opened the garage. Tessa walked through the groups with the inventory in her hand. She did not praise me or apologize for him. She checked the count. 42, she said. Gavin picked up the legal pad. "Which two need customer photos today?" "The notes are on the grid." "I need you to show me what angle you used for damage." "No." He stared at me. "You already know how." "I do. You are doing it now." He looked ready to argue. Tessa handed him his phone and the small ruler I had put with the supplies. "We can photograph them at the unit," she said. That was the first time she changed what she would do with the truth. She did not rescue me. She simply stopped helping Gavin pretend my labor was still available. They had rented a small storage unit across town for 1 month. Tessa told me they were pausing half the listings until they could see what the returns actually cost. Gavin would handle them on Saturdays. They were applying for a business mailbox that could accept the kind of deliveries they needed. Those were not punishments I had arranged. They were ordinary costs that had always existed. My home had only hidden them. Tessa showed me the key tag for the storage unit when she came back from the first load. The unit was 10 by 10 on the second row behind a tire shop. It cost less per month than Gavin had spent on the weekend promotion. "We should have done this at the beginning," she said. Gavin, carrying one end of a shelf box, answered, "We didn't know we needed it." Tessa did not argue. She looked at the carton still lining the wall. I could have corrected him. I could have said he had known the moment he changed the return address. But the purpose of that morning was transfer, not confession. Accountability sometimes means refusing to let an argument delay the work again. On the second load, Gavin discovered a damaged lamp he had told a customer was already inspected. He asked whether I remembered which side was scratched. "The note is taped to the shade," I said. "Can't you just tell me?" "I don't remember." That was true. Once I stopped carrying the business in my head, details began leaving faster than I expected. I had mistaken vigilance for permanence. 2 days without opening boxes, and the names and defects were already fading. Gavin opened the carton himself. He found the note. He photographed the scratch. The task took 4 minutes. For 6 weeks, 4-minute tasks had been arriving one at a time, each too small to defend myself against. Watching him do one showed me their true weight. No single task had filled my house. The assumption behind all of them had. Loading took nearly 3 hours. Gavin carried the long shelves. Tessa checked cartons against the grid. I stayed near the garage door and answered only questions about which loose piece belonged to which box. When the last carton was in the van, Gavin noticed the outline on the garage floor where the boxes had kept dust from settling. "You got what you wanted," he said. There are moments when a parent can reach for peace too quickly and call it love. I wanted to tell him I had not wanted any of this. I wanted to make his face soften before he drove away. Instead, I said, "I got my house back. I wanted you to ask." He shut the van door harder than necessary. Tessa gave me a tired nod before she climbed into the passenger seat. Then they left. The quiet afterward did not feel victorious. It felt large. I swept the garage floor. I moved the dining table back 6 inches. I opened the door that had been catching against cardboard and swung it all the way to the wall. For the first few days, I kept noticing absences. No tape gun on the sideboard, no marker rolling under my chair. No reason to turn sideways between the car and the garage wall. I had thought reclaiming the rooms would produce immediate relief. Instead, my body continued moving around obstacles that were no longer there. I also missed Gavin. That truth did not weaken the boundary. It simply kept the consequence honest. A clean decision can still leave a person grieving the closeness she thought she had. Then I called Marisol. "Does next Saturday still work for the repair afternoon?" "Your place or mine?" she asked. I looked at the empty stretch beside the china cabinet. Mine. 2 weeks later, 4 of us sat around the dining table with a toaster, 2 lamps, a torn canvas bag, and more confidence than expertise. Marisol brought a folding work mat. I made coffee. Everyone carried in the thing they wanted help with, and everyone carried it out again. Halfway through the afternoon, a bright loop delivery notification appeared on my phone. One old return label had not been updated. For a moment, my hands moved ahead of my judgment. I nearly opened the carrier app, nearly called Gavin, nearly took responsibility for guiding the parcel somewhere safe. Instead, I forwarded the notification to the group thread with one sentence. "This still lists my address. Please correct it before delivery." Gavin answered 20 minutes later. "Fixed. It will be held for pickup here." There was no accusation, no reminder of everything at stake. He solved it. That was the first test. 3 weeks passed before he asked to visit. His message said, "Can I come by Sunday around 3? Just me, no stock." I said yes. He brought bakery rolls and looked around the dining room as though he had forgotten its shape. We spoke about ordinary things first. A leaking faucet at his apartment. Marisol's toaster, which turned out not to be worth repairing. The Cleveland game. Then his phone buzzed. He glanced at it and said, "I have a return in the car. Could you look at one photo and tell me if the scratch is deep?" I felt the old answer rise. It would take only a minute. I knew how to frame the light. Helping would prove I was not still angry. Before I spoke, Gavin shook his head. "No, forget I asked. That's exactly what I said I wouldn't do." He put the phone face down. "I'm not available for returns work," I said. "I know." He did not sulk. He did not leave. We ate the rolls. That was the second test. At 2 months, Brightloop was smaller. Gavin and Tessa had kept the products that sold reliably and dropped the ones with expensive damage. The storage unit became a 6-month lease. Gavin spent Saturday mornings there, opening cartons and taking his own photographs. Tessa never became my source of business news. I did not ask her to report on Gavin, and she did not send me screenshots of their disagreements. Once, she called to apologize for accepting his explanation without checking with me. "You had no reason to think he was speaking for me without permission," I said. "I had a reason after the boxes kept growing." "So did I." That was as far as either of us took it. We were not forming an alliance against him. She had her boundary to set inside their partnership, and I had mine at my address. He did not thank me for forcing him to learn. That would have been too neat, and it was not how he felt. But he stopped telling me that my boundary had caused the costs. He began naming them as business costs. At 4 months, he apologized. We were in my kitchen. He stood with both palms around a coffee mug and said, "I knew you had not agreed to all of it." I waited. I kept thinking I would fix it before it became a real problem. Then every time you let one more thing happen, I used that as proof I could ask for the next thing. Sometimes you stopped asking. Yes. He looked toward the dining room. I also knew you hated disappointing me. I counted on that. That was the part I needed him to understand. Not because it made him cruel beyond repair, but because an apology that called everything confusion would leave the same door open. "I believe in you," I told him. "I don't believe for you. I don't work for you, and you cannot use what I tell you about being lonely to assign me a purpose." He nodded. I did not say everything was forgiven. I did not give him a key or offer a new kind of help. He finished his coffee, washed his mug, and asked whether I wanted him to tighten the loose hinge on the pantry door. I said no. Marisol and I had already put it on our repair list. He smiled a little. Okay. That was the third test, not the apology, but the okay. 6 months after carton 43 went back down my porch steps, the dining room table was scarred in 2 small places from our repair afternoons. One mark came from a screwdriver that rolled under a hot soldering iron. The other came from a clamp Marisol insisted was padded. I liked both marks. They came from work I had chosen in a room I could use. Bright Loop was still open. Gavin and Tessa were still together. They were not suddenly wealthy, and the business did not collapse. It became the size they could actually carry. Gavin and I spoke once or twice a week. Some calls were warm, some were careful. Trust returned as a series of ordinary moments in which he could have assumed and did not. The week before my birthday, he sent me a text. "I ordered something personal for you. May I have it sent to your house Thursday, or would you rather I bring it?" I read the message twice. Then I wrote, "One personal package on Thursday is fine. Thank you for asking." His answer came back, "Thank you for saying yes." I set down my phone. Marisol was across the table sorting screws into a muffin tin, and 2 neighbors were waiting for me to show them how to test a lamp cord. The package had not arrived yet. It did not need to. What mattered was that this time, before anything crossed my threshold, my son had asked.